Welcome to the second episode of the Tribecast, Jungle Brothers
What?
podcast made for our members and our community. Today we have a guest, Dave Brooksbank, and I'm here with Joe and Tira as well. Everyone say hi.
Hey guys,
Hello.
Great to be here.
Brooksbank on the mic.
Welcome.
You can't see his filthy cauliflower ears behind those earphones.
Oh yeah, they're great. These earphones hide my best feature.
So I guess the goal today, we want to get a little bit of a bio on Dave, and he's our specialist grappling coach, old friend of mine. We want to pick his brain on some stuff and hopefully provide a bit of context for the people out there. And then just get into it, see where it goes.
Can we do a quick recap then? Let's go down memory lane. Just spend a minute with how you ended up here, your history with Joe.
Well, it's actually quite funny. I was actually thinking about this on the drive over here. It's actually quite a funny story how I met Joe. I basically came over to Australia about 11 years ago, and I started doing Jiu Jitsu seriously when I was over here, and then I went back home for a year to finish off my degree. Anyway, when I came back, my coach had been training up these new guys, and he was like, "Oh man, I've got these killer white belts that I want you to roll with." And I was like, "Okay, I'll." Because I've been training for quite a while this time, I was like, "Man, I'll bash these guys." So anyway, Dan led me across to this guy that's sitting on the mat, and it turned out to be Joe. And that was literally the first time I'd ever met him. And my coach Dan was Dan Sainty. He was like, "Okay," he said, "let's see how we go." And then he was like, "Dave," he said, Don't be too nice to him." So anyway, Joe proceeded to kick the crap out of me. And I remember I was like, "Man, what the hell? This guy's been training for 3 months." Anyway, I didn't know that Dan had actually been training Joe specifically to kick my ass. So anyway, the roll continues to get more and more intense. And then it finishes towards the end when Joe actually has me in an armbar. And that's a submission where if I don't tap, my arm's going to break. And me being a... how old was I at the time? I don't know. Far younger than I am now. And I basically wasn't tapping, and the arm was fully extended. And I remember Joe had the arm, and he looked across at Dan, my coach, and our coach, and Dan yelled, "Break it!" and I tapped. So yeah, that was a long time ago. But that was the first time I actually met Joe. So. And since then we've been training most of the time. We've had a few breaks, but we've been training pretty much consistently for 10, 11 years since then. And Joe's obviously gone on the route towards the Jungle Brothers, which I think it's fair to say has taken a little bit of focus away from Jiu Jitsu. But, man, we've been training, pretty much consistently since then. So, yeah, long time.
Yeah. I think that first roll definitely set the tone for our relationship too. If we go back, there was kind of intermittent times when just a regular training session would turn into like the World Championship finals, and people would sort of clear away because Dave and I'd be having like a fucking ultimate grudge match against each other.
Yeah,
and I probably only got the better of him for those first sort of 6 months, and then it started to all lean his way.
I don't know. You've had your moments, man. It's gone back and forth a few times. You've really leveled up, and I've been like, "Oh crap!" and he's kicking the crap, and then I've just so it's gone back and forth. But yeah, it did set the tone. That's fair to say. But yeah.
So just a bit more of a background on yourself. Like before Jiu-Jitsu, what were you playing sport then, or were you always into martial arts? And then maybe tell us a bit about where you've trained at and what kind of belt you have, and you've had some experience in competitions and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So I mean, let's start at the beginning. That's the easiest place. Before Jiu-Jitsu, I actually started off like exercising at 18. I was a chubby 18-year-old, never trained, never did anything, and I kind of drifted into martial arts half by accident. And there was a kung fu club I went to, and I just walked in, and the guys were rolling around on the floor. And I didn't know this, but they had literally just started. They had no idea, by modern standards, what they were doing. And it was my first sifu was a guy called Ross Whitby in England, and lovely guy, great guy. And him and his top student Phil Else kind of drew me into grappling, and I did it for a few years, and it was it's what I had a job and everything, but I only ever looked forward to training. So to actually gradually be able to make money from training, like I came to Australia and then met my coach, Dan Sainty. Well, I met him in Thailand actually, but came to Australia to train with him, and then to be able to do it full time was. It really, everyone goes, jiu-jitsu saved my life. I mean, I don't know whether it saved it, but it certainly made it far more pleasurable and a far greater experience than, I mean, you guys are exceptions, but like a lot of people, they have the 9 till 5 grind, and then they have 2 or 3 hours every day that they actually enjoy. And for me, it freed me from that. So coming through the ranks of jiu-jitsu, going from white belt to blue, to purple, brown, and then finally to black. It was an amazing experience of being able to do what I enjoy, but I tell you what, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's tough. It's as my coach once said, it's the girl you'll never get. It's just
well said.
It's it's this thing that's always out of reach, but you keep trying, and it's a lot of fun trying to get there. So yeah.
Dave, what's your definition of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I mean, if you were to try and explain it in words to someone who's got no idea what it is, how would you define it?
Well, that's quite an expansive question. But basically, what I would say, if someone said that, it's basically it's a grappling art. It's an art where you don't kick or punch, but you actually learn to apply pressure and force your will on somebody with just using your body weight. You can do that from the top, you can do that from the bottom. There's a huge sphere of human movement that comes into jiu-jitsu, and it's something that anyone can do. Like you look at a lot of striking, the guys that strike, for the most part, they're very fit, strong, fast, athletic guys. And you do get guys like that in jiu-jitsu, of course, Joe being one of them. But
thank you.
It's
used to be one of them.
No, I'm still one,
but you don't need that. You can be very technical, and I've never been particularly athletic, but I've always really tried to emphasize the technical aspect of jiu-jitsu. So that's why a thin, scrawny English guy can actually hold his own against someone like Joe, who's considerably bigger, stronger, and more explosive than me. So that's what I
very explosive.
Joe is actually my boss here, one of my bosses, and I'm actually aiming for a raise here. So I'm being very nice to him on the record. But anyway,
wrong boss, bro.
Well,
big boss.
Yeah, we'll get to you, man. Don't worry. I've just started. But anyway, no, and that's what I would say about jiu-jitsu. It's something anyone can do. Anyone can do really well, and anyone can get really good at. And it's a great thing to be good at as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I think that the use of the body weight, like because you could say that applies. That definition could also carry over to, say, wrestling or something like that.
Oh, totally.
In moments. But I think the thing that makes jiu-jitsu is unique is the refinement of timing and positioning and leverage.
Oh, definitely.
They're the things that allow the smaller person to beat the bigger person, and that's what enables. That's why it's so hard to understand why, when you roll with someone like Dave, why it's just so fucking difficult, because you're like, on the outside or on paper, everything, like, things don't look that, drastically different, but they just are, because his understanding of those innate qualities is so much greater. And that's kind of the invisible jiu-jitsu, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, invisible jiu-jitsu that Joe referred to there is when you look at what's going on, you can't see what's going on. You actually have to feel it. Like, you can see two people rolling or wrestling with each other, and you can't see what's going on. You can't tell. You have to experience it to feel the weight that's coming down, the pressure. That's what it's called, invisible jiu-jitsu. It's there, but it's also not there unless you're feeling it, or you obviously have an understanding of what's going on. So yeah.
Do you guys consider it more of a sport or a martial art? Like your own personal. I know that it's both, but I guess different people focus on they travel a different path with martial arts. I know from my own experience that it's been more of a sport approach with rules, and I've never really delved into the katas and the mindset of a martial artist or anything like that. What is it more to you guys?
Well, for myself, I think that's a difficult one, actually. It's interesting. I think it's a bit of both. I mean, you can generally, in jiu-jitsu, you can break it down into self-defense or the sportative side. And the self-defense side is obviously, it's pretty simple. You're trying to beat someone who is attacking you. So that I would say is the martial arts side. I would say I have focused more on the sport aspect of jiu-jitsu. I've competed a lot in numerous disciplines, in wrestling, in kickboxing, in jiu-jitsu, in MMA, but I really would say it's both. I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about the jiu-jitsu. It is whatever you want it to be, whatever you'd like it to be. You can make it whatever you want it to be. So there is definitely a huge sportive aspect to it, but there's also a real martial arts side too. So, I mean, what is it for me? Possibly getting more towards the martial arts side now, but there's definitely a sport there for me too.
I have an admission to make. What is the definition of a martial art? Can anyone tell me that? Because I kind of have a feeling, but I can't articulate.
Well, let's try and paint a picture. Let's try and work that out. Usually,
martial is like a military.
Well,
and art is the art or the practice of a military.
Yeah.
Something or other.
I think you could interpret military as a discipline. So, because it's a discipline that you follow. So the military is, for yourself, getting up, training, staying consistent with it, always developing type thing. It's like a self-military type thing. So, I don't know, with the martial art, there's a culture that goes with it. It's a way of life. It's personal development too.
Well, I think martial comes from the arts of Mars, like the planet of war. That's where the word originates from. So, I think anything where there's a discipline and it's set down what you're actually doing, I think that is a martial art. Because there's a huge people have been wrestling as long as they've been able to walk around. So they've been, it's been there. But I think go back to ancient Greece and you look at the pancration that they had there, and that was, that was when it was. I think one of the first times it was fully, it became a. What's the word? High profile. It became a high profile thing, and that's when people
like a league.
Exactly, yes. And it's like, that's a martial arts. Like when you had there were 4 cities or the 4 areas in Greece, and one of them was
that would be a sport, Olympia. Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be a martial art if it was like utilized by soldiers in the military or something?
Well, that's a good point. But what if it's a?
I'm googling.
Google that shit.
Awesome.
Cool. We just came from the Google office. We get like ultra quick responses from Google now.
Only people in botany with it.
Yeah. But what if it is 2 people who are engaged in an actual a fight and a one-on-one battle? It doesn't have to necessarily be something where I declare war on you. It could be that we're having an actual fight and
to the death.
Well,
we've had a few of those.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, for me, and I'm sure Dave would, and anyone who's been on some kind of, combat sport or martial arts journey themselves could identify. But the thing with jiu-jitsu is that you get into it for whatever reason. It's, exciting, fun. You want to get fit. You like the idea of rolling around, submitting people. But then ultimately it becomes like at some point there's an internal battle because I know for me there was a big internal battle because I started, I was quite athletic. I had this sort of natural ability that carried me through for a while. But then, like, you get to a point when you get someone that's better than you, or faster, or more athletic, and then you're getting your ass kicked in training. You know, you used to go to training and you could kind of kick everyone's ass, and now you're getting your ass kicked. And then, like, on the outside, it's no big problem, but internally, it's like your ego takes a massive bashing, right? And I know, like, how many guys start jiu-jitsu, have that, get to the point where they're not the top dog anymore, and then quit. And it's like, oh yeah, I did it for a couple of years, got a blue belt, and then they're out of it. I think that, like, once you get into that side of it and you start to overcome these internal things where you're actually addressing your ego, you're forced to challenge your own belief systems or your own identity. So, you know, what am I? Am I the fucking grappling monster that just, you know, like, is that me? Or am I actually just a guy that I was okay at it then and I'm still okay now, but there's heaps of people out there that are better than me, and it's just a practice that I'll continue to do. I feel like that becomes the martial arts side of it, you know, that kind of inner journey. And that's, you know, because the way I look at it, if it's just a sport thing, then it's like I'd turn up to my training and like when I used to play soccer, I didn't give a fuck that much. Turn up and train once a week.
Showed.
Dickhead. But, you know, it's different. It's different for whatever reason, but there's less of a buy-in there, and it's, you know, you don't have this kind of challenging, maybe because it's a team sport, I don't know, as opposed to an individual sport. But, yeah, I feel like that martial arts kind of, or that warrior element of it is kind of an internal thing that occurs.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, man.
I got Wikipedia here. Here we go. Wikipedia says, martial arts are codified systems and traditions of combat practices which are practiced for a number of reasons as self-defense, military and law enforcement applications, mental and spiritual development, as well as entertainment and the preservation of a nation's intangible cultural heritage. To your award, can you comment?
No. That all makes sense to me. It covers a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty far-reaching, isn't it? It's
you could almost include sport within that, right?
Yeah, well, that's,
in a way,
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned at the end about a country's culture, because you look at, for instance, like judo. It comes from Japan, which has very rigid, you know, like you bow at the beginning of each contest. It's very, very, you know, like set, you know, formal beginnings for contests. And then you have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which ironically came directly from judo, but it's a far more relaxed, especially in when there's competition, and it really reflects the kind of the cultural impact, the cultural origin of the actual martial art, you know, of Japanese society, and then a Brazilian culture, which is far more relaxed and easygoing.
Relax, man.
Yeah, relax, my friend. Then I'm going to get hated on for that.
Never do that again.
No problem.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's definitely got that street style kind of aspect to it, which is what makes it a lot more fun, I think. Less rigid than traditional martial arts.
It's a really great aspect of it that I think. I just want to pick up on something that you were talking about, where you were talking about the inner journey, and I think one of the great things about jiu-jitsu, I mean, I can't comment so much on other martial arts, but for jiu-jitsu it was with me, it's the fact that it is a real struggle, and it's a great metaphor for life, that you struggle and you struggle again and you improve. I'm taking a lot from Joe Rogan here, but you know, I really love it, the fact that you do struggle and you do. There are those points where someone who was, I'm going to use quote marks here, below you, rises above you, and then you have two options. You can either say, right, no, I will rise to the top again above you, or I kind of half give up, and you say, right, okay, it's just going to be a 3 times a week kind of thing. And that's what I think Joe was talking about, where a lot of people, they just kind of, they're half broken, but people who stick with it and they appreciate that, you know, you're not always going to be the hammer, sometimes you're going to be the nail, but in the end you will persevere if you do keep going. And it's like that in life, and that's what I love about jiu-jitsu. It's not about the competition, or it's nice to win medals, but it's the fact that it improves you as a person. And it's the same, I'm sure, with the the movement community, you know, that to do their thing, you know, where it's like, you know, it takes years to be able to achieve some of the things you do. I've seen you doing your freaking crazy handstand push-ups, Joe, you know, and it's like, I can't do that. You know, but it'll take, you know, years to get there. So I appreciate, you know, and I've seen, you know, you T doing some of your, so, you know, you doing your flag. I can't do that, you know, but I appreciate it took years for you to get there to be able to do it. So yeah, struggle.
I'd like to share a little story about Dave because when I look at Dave and when I think about his style, and this is not on the surface, but probably the word that fits his grappling style is tenacious, and I think that's something that has been a necessary cultivation for you know, what do you weigh?
70 kilos.
70 kilos.
Yeah.
So for a 70-kilo guy who you've competed in the open division many times.
Yeah.
So yeah, open division is like open weight. So you get guys 100 kilo plus in there, which if you take two people at a similar skill level and then give one of them an extra 30, 40 kilos, it's obviously a pretty hefty advantage. One weekend years ago, and I can't fucking remember why we did it, but Dave and I decided to do two competitions on the one weekend. There was a Saturday competition in Brisbane and a Sunday competition in Melbourne. You remember that?
Yeah, of course, man.
Yeah, it was like the Queensland Open or something, and then
it was Brisbane. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah,
Brisbane, and then that
Brisbane
was
Saturday, and then so we flew up to Brisbane. I think we stayed the night there. Maybe went and did the comp. I fought against my arch nemesis, got beaten in the final, as per usual. You can go back to the earlier podcast if you want to hear that story. I can't remember how you did in Brisbane. Did you? What happened to you there?
We just fought absolute. They didn't have anyone my weight, so I fought absolute. I won my first fight, and then I lost my second against my, at the time, arch nemesis, Mita Almeida. I'll
yes.
give him a shout out. Yeah, I think we fought about 5 times. I never beat that guy, which we fought 5 times, but man, he was... I think
Wait, didn't you fight him then in the next day when we were in Melbourne?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that was the footlock day.
That was the footlock day.
Yes, I can't remember that.
That was the day of many footlocks. But that was one weekend, and we did 2 comps, and we flew around the country like superstars.
Well, yeah. So we did this comp in Brisbane, and then we flew to Melbourne that night, and then we stayed the night, and then we got up, and then went to a comp again the next day, and I'll fucking be honest, like the energy was pretty low by then because there's a stress or an expenditure of energy that comes from just being at a comp and waiting to compete and all that stuff. And there's a lot of nerves and anxiety for most people. For me, there was plenty, and I never really liked that feeling. But so we did the Brisbane comp, we did the Melbourne comp, and Dave competed in his weight. And don't go ahead of the story, but do you remember how you did in your weight division that day?
No.
Neither. You had a few matches, I remember, and the day had basically come to an end. And there was I think we checked, Dave was registered for the absolute division, so another division on that second day. And nothing was happening, and we were looking at the clock, and we had a flight out of there, and we're like, cool, we fucking had a bunch of matches, maybe won a couple of medals, picked up a couple of free T-shirts, let's get out of here. So I'd already had a shower, I was like, had all my shit together, ready to go to the airport. Dave's like, cool, man, I'm just going to go take a shower. He goes downstairs, take a shower. I'm hanging out in the competition hall, and then I hear fucking David Brooksbank, match number 4, and I'm like, oh shit, Dave's on again. So I run over to the mat, and I'm like, yeah, I'm here with Dave, and they're like, are you Dave Brooksbank? I'm like, no, he's in the shower, and they're like, he's got 2 minutes to be on the mat, and I was like, oh, okay, thinking, we're out of here, man. Dave's already having a shower. So I run down to the bathroom. I'm like, Dave, you in here? He's like, yeah, man, I'm having a shower. I said, dude, they've called your name. You got to match up, but I'm guessing you don't want to do it. You're like, what? They called my name? Fucking let's go, man. So Dave...
That's my name. It's out there.
Jumps out of the shower, like, still soapy and shit, chucks on his gi or whatever he had, and he comes up to the match, and the match is with Paul Stoiler, who's like a fucking monster.
He's a tank, man.
The guy's enormous, man. And it was like 5, 6 o'clock, 2 big days. He could have just bailed out and gone like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to finish washing under my arms and let's go to the airport. And Dave jumps back on the mats against this fucking behemoth who's 2% body fat. I can't remember how it went, but I know he fucked you up.
That's fair. Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
But I was like, I had so much respect for you at that moment. I was like, mate, I would not have done that. I would have just cruised into a taxi and gone home. But
no, he won pretty convincingly, as I remember it. But no, that was pretty much what happened. Yeah, I remember that. I was I got out of the shower and just ran onto the mats and then ran straight back to the shower again afterwards. Yeah, we had to sprint for the taxi for the flight. I remember that. Yeah, it was a cool weekend, man.
It was.
So, Dave, on that subject, like dealing with being the weight that you are and having to deal with, I mean, obviously I'm guessing being a black belt, you probably always have people wanting to test themselves against you, like brown belts and purple belts and guys that are obviously going to be a lot bigger than you.
Yeah.
How do you deal with first, like, someone that's getting aggressive with you on the mats, and then also how do you deal with, say, like injury management? And do you get injured often?
No.
Right.
I answered your last question first, so I'll answer your...
Working backwards.
Yeah. So, I mean, someone who's aggressive on the mats, man, like, generally speaking, you get lots of different kinds of roles. You get kinds of roles where you're practicing something. You'll get the kind of role where you're actually... like you're just having fun and you're rolling, and then there'll be another kind of role where it's a fight. And I had a discussion with someone online about this where they were saying jiu-jitsu is not a fight. And I was like, well, in the nicest way possible, man, you've never had a really intense role. Like, you know, you've obviously never competed and had a really intense role. I remember we were talking about Mito Almeida. I had one of my fights with him, and I remember he had me mounted at one point, and he was choking me, and the choke, I tucked my chin, and he had the attitude of, well, okay, I'm going to put it across your jaw then. And he did, and my teeth sliced up the inside of my mouth, and there was blood everywhere, and it was so funny. There was blood all over his gi, blood all over mine, and that was a fight. That was like, you know, that was as intense as any of my MMA matches. So like that was a fight. So how do you deal with it? Well, you get used to it. That's it. You know, you get used to being able to defend yourself and being able to put yourself in safe positions. And fortunately, I've had training partners like Joe that specialize in trying to take my head off, you know, so it's...
Happy to help.
Yeah. Oh, very happy, yeah. And so, you know, you get used to it. But, you know, like, as in fairness, as Joe and I have got older and uglier, you know, we have, well, in my case, uglier. Anyway, we have... you learn to relax more, and it's not about me beating the other guy. It's, you know, and when someone then comes in with that attitude of, I want to beat him, that's the black belt, you're just like, okay, man, give it your best shot.
Yeah.
And if you do, awesome. Good for you, man. I mean, I'm going to come back and try and kick your ass now because, you know, but it's, you know, it's just the way it is, man. You know, everyone wants to win no matter what. So, yeah, I get it. It's cool.
If you're just coming from a member's point of view at Jungle Brothers, and I've had a few people that I've talked to on the floor about, and I've asked them, have you tried the jiu-jitsu class? Are you going to get in there and have a go? And a lot of them are like, a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to get in there and have a crack at it. And there's other people that are like, they're not sure about it. You know, they see what's happening on the mats. They don't understand what's going on. There's a lot of contact, and from a distance it can look quite intimidating. So if you're dealing with someone who's like an absolute beginner, doesn't have a lot of much of a training history, how do you approach someone like that? How do you get them to feel comfortable on the mats, and what kind of procedures like take place for them to enjoy the sport and not get themselves beat up?
Well, generally speaking, the first class is always the hardest if you're starting. That's the one where you're like, oh, I don't know. Like, I would always say, come with someone that you know. If someone's a complete beginner and they're obviously a little bit slightly, I'm not going to use the word intimidated, but if we're a bit nervous, I'm going to say, okay, then you go with whoever your friend is that you brought along. You just stay with them for the evening or most of the evening. We'll switch around, and that way you know that you're with someone that you trust, and everything you do is it's fine. You know you're a beginner, and it's like, it's not a problem. I mean, generally speaking, everyone that I've spoken to in the Jungle Brothers one, everyone's been incredibly relaxed with their rolling, and I can't think of one injury that has happened while I've been training here. The funny thing is, in complete flipping the ratios, we have, in my classes anyway, always more girls than guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's the first time in the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that has ever happened. Normally it's 20 guys and you've got one girl, who is like, really loves, Jiu-Jitsu. But here there's always more girls than guys. And I always say this, girls are smart. Girls pick it up really quick. And, they're used to being the smaller person, and they really channel that fact of that they're the smaller person. They have to be more technical, and they really pick up and understand jiu-jitsu wonderfully. It's great to see.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, the evening classes are probably slightly more males.
Sure.
But definitely, I mean, I think girls in general train with less ego than guys, right? And that egoless approach allows them to learn quicker.
Oh, sure. I mean, I always say, if someone says, how do I avoid getting injured? I'm saying, right, okay. Always be ready to tap. Never be afraid to tap. And then develop safe positions where you can't get hurt. And then you can always go to them if you want to. And the safe position, so what are safe positions? All right, well, tuck your elbows into your body and tuck your chin down. And that can be the first safe position. So if you're on your back and you're getting squished, just make sure your arm doesn't get isolated. Don't let the guy get on your neck, So that's what I would say.
I think, going back to your question, T, about dealing with new people in a class and that kind of thing, which has been an interesting, what's the word?
The dynamic?
Yeah. Something that we've had to be really mindful of, introducing the grappling program here. But I think a lot of it around, it has to be an effective you have to be able to teach people the context of what they're doing on the mat. So they look at it from the outside and it looks like one thing. And then, you see it when you let newer people roll that they just kind of engage in this primal kind of wrestling thing. So I think it's really about stopping them from tapping into that primal side straight off the bat, not letting them roll, not letting them freestyle with each other, but giving them like a set position or a set concept and having them play with that and go, cool, like this is just one little part, keep doing it. And, and gradually over the days or over the sessions, building on those layers of context until they get to a point where they're like, oh, okay, I kind of get how it works now. I can't do it. Like there's still, whatever, there's still much more coordination and a billion different positions to learn, but they kind of get the idea of it. And I think once you get to that point, then it's like, okay, cool. Now we can start to let the leash off a little bit and let you roll, right? Which is, in jiu-jitsu class, that's generally the fun part that everyone wants to get to. It's like you want to roll.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But in the beginning, at least, and depending, but for most people in the beginning, we don't let them roll, right? Like now,
not straight away.
Yeah, I think for the first couple of weeks we didn't, first few weeks maybe, but now everyone's at a level where they can roll and they're very respectful and gentle with each other. And it's cool.
That's mainly a safety thing?
Yeah, totally. You don't want them to hurt each other, but also you don't want someone to get like emotionally scarred. Like you don't want to put, someone who's new and maybe a little bit intimidated by the whole thing to roll with some monster, and then they get beaten up and they're like, "Fuck, I never want to experience that again." They will experience it eventually, but you want to be able to prepare them a little bit before that time comes.
Yeah, I agree with Joe on that, and that's something we actually talked about quite a bit. And I've seen it in other places I've trained where someone has been like scarred by getting roughed up. One has to build people up before you can actually test them with rolling. I mean, some people you just throw them on. You're like, yeah, okay, you've done a couple of weeks, you're fine. Other people, little more time is needed. But.
Yeah, I remember my first lesson jumping straight into the fire, and I fucking loved it. But it was because I went with some other guy who wasn't that good, and I was able to choke him out a bunch of times because I'd watched a few UFC session events, and I was like,
You're an expert then,
I was
man.
like,
You're an
this
expert.
is mad. Yeah, this is the best sport ever. But yeah, it was highly irresponsible. Had I not have been, whatever, moderately physically prepared, it could have gone completely in the opposite direction.
It's funny you say that actually, because I was teaching at at another place where I actually teach. Quick shout out to JJA Maroubra, by the way,
Oi.
and Johnny Walton, great guy, and there was this kid that turned up, and I was like, hey, how's it going? He's a bit of a bigger kid, bigger than all of the others, but anyway, he was wrestling, and I was looking, I was like, he said he'd never trained before, and I was watching him, and a little sod had obviously done something before, and I was like, oh, right, okay, what's going on here? And I spoke to him afterwards, and I was like, where have you trained before? No, I've never done it before, it's my first session. I was like, no, man, seriously, come on, he was 13. I was like, come on, where have you trained? He was like, no, he said, I've watched quite a bit of UFC. You've watched it on telly. And then you came and did it on a resisting opponent here. I was like, my God. So for me, it's interesting just how, especially in this case, kids just pick things up. Like that, now, Joe and I can do it. You can see a move and go, oh, yeah, right, and you'll do it because, we've been doing this for years. But if you've never done it, it's literally like watching a program on how to fly the space shuttle. You've watched like a couple of instructionals on it. Oh, yeah. Well, I've got this. I can fly the down. It's like no. You haven't got a clue, mate. And it was just really interesting. Like
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about you guys? You guys have both been on jiu-jitsu journeys. What was your initial experience?
Well, my first. Well, you were doing jiu-jitsu for years before I ever walked into my first jiu-jitsu school.
I remember you from 10 years ago, man. You had the afro.
You had an afro, bro.
Yours was more epic than mine. Come on, man. Mine was kind of not cool, but yeah.
Wispy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
That's right.
Yeah, there was years back then when Joe was doing this thing and we were hanging out and I had no idea. Like I wasn't watching UFC. I had no idea. And you would have been doing it for 4 years or maybe more before I even thought, no, this is pretty interesting. I'd like to give it a go. Joe used to just wrestle me whenever he could. I remember once we were shooting on a film. Remember when we were
in Melbourne?
In Melbourne, yeah. And they put us up. They flew us down for some shoots on this. Some sort of series that we kept on flying.
Band
down
of Brothers.
Band of Brothers. We were working on that, and they had us in a hotel. And we went out one night, got drunk. Joe would just latch onto me. And it was like after midnight, and he was wrestling me down the streets of Melbourne. Go back to the hotel room, more wrestling going on. He took me out into a wall, and I threw me to this wall and put a big hole in this hotel wall. It was just below the window, but luckily it had floor to ceiling curtains. We just pulled the curtain across the hole, and that was that. But yeah, there was lots of times. That was my first real jiu-jitsu experiences. Was just Joe. Just roll happy.
Man, I sound like such a dick, but I'm such a nice guy.
He's a nice guy. And then eventually, I can't remember. I guess I wanted to get back into martial arts of some sort. I was playing soccer, wasn't that stoked on it. And then I started watching a bit of UFC, and it became interesting for me. And then I ended up at Marrickville Fair. I was living in Marrickville at the time, and someone handed me a flyer. And it was like, come down for a free thing. And I was like, holy shit, this gym is literally on the other side of my block. It was a 2-minute walk. So, I went in there. And
awesome.
And that was, Mario.
Mario Yokohama.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so then I trained there.
You guys competed against each other?
Yeah. We've fought a couple of times. I think we're 1-1 at the moment. He's... we're both old now, but no, he's a cool guy. I'm friends with some of his students. So
nice.
It's a good school, my BJJ. So.
Nice.
Yeah, I really loved it. From the beginning, it was very challenging, and it took me a long time to get over being physical and being tense. It took me a good year of going there consistently to freaking try and I still am very much like that. But for me, it was a very big change. Coming from a team sports guy type mentality, it was get your ass kicked, come back. Nothing changes until I change, and for me that was a very big shift in my whole thinking, like for all of my life and everything that I was doing, actually. Because up until that point, it was all sports where you win together and you lose together. This was like all you know, like
Interesting.
And I took a lot from that. I still do, and you know, it didn't work out over the years. Freaking traveling on films and stuff, and not getting the consistent training. But I'm super stoked that we've got it in our gym here, and I'm starting to pick it back up again. So it's good energy here,
Good to see.
Yeah, it's cool. And Tiora,
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, having it here in the gym with
Yeah.
us, you know, it's great. Love it. I've never delved into the jits the way you guys have. I've always looked at it as more of a not an accessory thing for me, but something to like an area where I'd like to fill in my training just to kind of complete things. I much prefer to kick and punch things
Pummel.
a lot more.
The platform was falling down.
But yeah, I love it. It's awesome. And I'm still reigning longest white belt in history of Sydney.
Tiora was
I'd
the
say.
first man to ever show me how to do a rear naked choke.
Really?
Yep,
Reigning
2000
white belt.
2006 on set of Superman. He was like, hey, man, this is how you do a rear naked choke. I was like, whoa, what is it? Oh, stop.
Still the only move I know how to do. I remember my first jiu-jitsu class was at Marubo with Bruno.
That's going
And
back.
that was like, I didn't even know what it was. I just knew that they were doing it in the UFC, and I thought, okay, I'd like to learn a bit of that. And I went down there, and it was we had to set all the mats up because it was after the lifesavers. Like they have a little lifesaver meeting in there, and then they would clear everything out, and then we'd set the mats up, and then have to break them down again. And it was more like a bit of a ghetto setup, but it was
Fight
awesome.
club.
Yeah. And you just roll with like shirtless, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's what it was like in the early days, huh?
Back in the day, man. It's
Yeah.
come a long way,
It's
huh?
all shirtless.
Boardies and shirtless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just going for it.
Yeah, it was pretty physical. It was tough. It was good. I enjoyed it. But, yeah, I think, like, looking at the way the standard jiu-jitsu class plays out, how would you... This is probably more questions more to you, Joe. Now that you have control of your programming, now that you have control of your warm-ups, and you've been around from gym to gym, what things have you done differently that you felt your standard jiu-jitsu class was missing? What's the point of difference that you've brought to Jungle Brothers?
Yeah, I like that question. There's been a few key things, I reckon. The main one is proper joint preparation beforehand, and just generally preparing the body, like a good warm up, which is usually pretty rudimentary in a standard jiu-jitsu class and doesn't pay particular attention to perhaps the areas that need it most. So that's the first thing. Second thing would be trying to give context behind the techniques that we're learning, because there's so many different techniques and positions and terms in the world of jiu-jitsu that you turn up to the standard class and they're like, today we're working on this, and then the next day you're working on this, and then we're working on this. And you need to learn all of those things. But I think for a newer individual, often what they miss out on is someone actually giving them the bigger picture of like, well, this is kind of the intention of like the aim of a match in jiu-jitsu is to do this. So, from a mechanical perspective, one of the most efficient ways we can do it is by using X. So I'm going to teach you guys something towards that, and we're going to focus on this concept. And so it kind of sounds a bit airy, but I've found that taking a little bit more time to talk about the technique and the concept rather than just getting straight into the technique has helped people. Thirdly, something that I've gone away from a little bit, mainly just because I haven't found enough time to get it as a regular part, but something that I've been trying to squeeze into the classes that I will be doing more of is taking time at the end of the session to down-regulate the nervous system. So anyone that's done any kind of fight work, if you go to a class in the evening, like you finish a grappling class at night, You usually go home, the appetite's not really there, and you can't fucking sleep for hours. And it's because your nervous system is still super jacked up and you're all excited, and it's a nice feeling, but it doesn't serve you being able to rest and recover and then come back and, after a good sleep and train again the next day.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've been trying to include some kind of work at the end of the session to down-regulate. So whether it's breath work, mostly breath work, verging on a little bit of meditation. And that's been super effective. It just is hard in a 1 hour session, and especially too, because at this stage I want to give everyone so much, as I'm sure Dave does. You want to teach them all the things, and they want to ask you all the questions, and you want to be able to have time for all that.
Yeah. No, that's I really like that, actually. The as you say, the down regulating of the nervous system. That's a big problem. You finish training at 9, it's probably going to be midnight before your system is died down, relaxed. It's having something like that. If you can shave an hour or two off that, that's a huge thing, especially if you've got an early morning training session or you're going to work early the next morning. That's a massive thing for recovery. I like that a lot. That's
I think it goes a long way, huh? People notice it, and yeah, it does. I mean, look, the other thing that I guess I should mention is trying to thread the greater lessons of jiu-jitsu and of grappling and how they apply to your physical development is something that we've tried to weave into the classes here. So, even from the games that we play or the warm-up drills, or even what perspective you should take when you're rolling with another person, trying to give people a little bit of context about how that applies to their life. So like this concept that Dave and I have discussed a lot and that we explored in our retreats last year was this concept of understanding or coming to understand your durability. So realizing that you are way more durable than you think. You have your body is strong, it's tough. You can handle being battered around a little bit. But most of us aren't exposed to an environment where we get that stimulus. So when we first get it, it's super stressful and it's scary and it's intimidating and all those things. I think jiu-jitsu, if you can understand that is a part of it and that you can kind of regulate the intensity of it, then you can start to become comfortable with that kind of thing and being in that stressful environment. And I think that's the big carryover to life. It's like, because life's fucking stressful. You're going to have situations where you're getting battered around. You're going to have your limits tested. And it's kind of nice to know, okay, I've been in a really stressful situation before and there is always an end to it and I can find a way out of it and I just need to control my mind and, I can always tap. I think there's a nice carryover there. So that's been something that I've tried to pass on a bit.
No, I agree. I think that's a very important point there, and just realizing, as you say, that it doesn't matter how bad it is, it will pass, and it will improve. So there's when Joe's saying about tapping out, that's not saying I give in. That's actually just acknowledging, right? Okay, reset, and we go again.
Yep.
There is no stop. You just keep going. You just keep going. So, no, it's interesting stuff.
Dave, I wanted to ask you, I guess, just a couple of last questions. I wanted to hit you up on, a couple of things. What do you think is the number one misconception about jiu-jitsu or grappling in general, or fight training? I guess I'm talking relevant, sorry to cut you off, relevant to someone who's not doing much of that stuff. Someone who's coming and training some strength and movement classes or some lift classes. Where does it sit for them?
Well, I think that the common misconception, in my opinion, is that you're learning how to fight. And you are. But we've already touched on this. But what you're actually doing is, there are some people that are going to go and become world champions, but there's not many of them. But for everybody else, in my opinion, jiu-jitsu is about, or fight training, doing the striking training with Tior or something like that, is all about, we've touched on this extensively already, but it's learning to be a better and stronger person. That's, I think, the misconception. You think that you're learning how to fight. You're not. You're learning to be a stronger person, as in a more durable person, someone who can withstand the knocks that life will take you, will actually hit you. So I think hit you with. So that I think is is the big misconception. It's not actually about the fighting. It's about the rest of your life. And if you can withstand someone like Joe, like putting all his body weight down on you, and you're thinking, oh my God, I can't possibly escape. And then you do escape. You're like, oh wow, I got out. I mean, it might be that Joe was being very nice to you and he might have actually let you escape, but that's not but that's not the point. The point is that, it's not actually even about the fighting or the wrestling or the rolling or the striking or whatever. It's about the rest of your life. That's the important bit, not the bit on the mat.
I like that.
So you're co-coaching some of our other classes, Dave, and you're getting exposure, I'm guessing, to a bunch of different movement patterns and stuff that you've already been training as well. You have your own journey that you're traveling on, and I see you working with one of our other coaches, Alan, who's a fucking amazing mover. The way the guy moves like an octopus.
He's a weapon, isn't he?
He's
like an
awesome.
octopus.
Very, very mobile and very, very strong.
Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah, and he's got great.
Not as good as
body
you though, Joe. But
I didn't want to say anything. Sup, Al?
So, and I mean that's another journey again. Like within that, you've got your jiu-jitsu practice, and then you've got the stuff that you're doing on the side as well.
Sure.
You're co-coaching in the other classes. If someone was interested in doing some one-on-one sessions with you, or just talking to you about jiu-jitsu, you're always open for that, and you're around on the mats. What other stuff are you doing to help you continue to do what you love doing?
That's a great question, actually. I mean, it's interesting. In the last few years, I've actually really started focusing on mobility and stretching. And it's quite funny, actually. I trained for years without ever bothering to stretch. But learning how to become more mobile and strong at end of range has really enabled me to keep doing what I'm doing. I can already see that my body recovers faster, and learning with Alan new ways of mobilizing the body and moving, that is very important, for me to be able to keep training like every single day. I train multiple times every day, and the stretching and the mobilizing and the recovery is so important. And as you get a bit older, you realize you're not 19 anymore. You can't just go and do it. You've got to prep your body, and this comes back to what Joe was talking about the warm-ups, having like a pre-warm-up thing, where you really loosen your body off. You have a look at any parts that are tense, you stretch out, then you warm up, and then you warm down afterwards. I actually want to take this off to another direction and just actually say, one thing I have noticed is everyone that I've trained with here picks up stuff, or picks up the moves remarkably quickly, far more quickly than on average most people do. And I really think a lot of it down is to the movement training that the guys do here. They know how to move their bodies. I'll explain a technique, I'll show it a few times, and they do it. The guys do it. It's very efficient. And it's, at first I was surprised that people were improving as much as they were, but now you're like, okay, no, I appreciate it. It's all the extra training the guys are doing, this, important movement training.
Yeah, it's cool. It's nice for you to acknowledge that. I think that base that they've got goes a long way, huh? T's tapping out.
Sorry, I have to head downstairs.
Good.
Thanks, Dave.
You get on it.
You know what that means? It means he's 30 minutes late for a PT appointment. Oh, too good. Well, look, I got a couple of little quick fire bits for you, and then we'll wrap it up. General things. Tell me, you got a morning routine that you follow?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I got a morning routine. I stretch out every morning. Every morning I stretch out, and not too hard, but I just make sure that everything is mobile. My joints are really just mobilized straight away.
You jump straight out of bed and do that? You have a shower first?
Pretty much. No, I'm actually into the Wim Hof stuff
Very nice.
that you are. I love doing. I did the his beginners program a couple of years ago, and I love cold showers.
Nice.
Like that's and everyone goes,
Love, hate, right?
no, I love it actually.
Love it,
yeah,
love it?
I love it. I love it. It's like
It still scares the
great.
shit out of me every morning.
Oh
I still
man,
do
but
it.
yeah, but I went through that phase. But the thing is, you feel like you're a quitter if you don't do it.
Oh, yeah.
you're like, man, I got man, I'm not a quitter. You look in
Yeah.
the mirror, no,
Yeah.
and then you get in the shower. But no, it's
And you cry.
and it was there were tears, but yeah, it's I have a cold shower, and that actually helps set me up. I'm like, right.
So what? You jump out of bed, you do a little stretch routine, and
Yeah.
then you jump in the cold shower.
Generally speaking, yeah, I didn't like stretching straight after the cold shower. You know, it didn't feel. I felt a bit more tense. But the thing is, then I'll stretch out, and then I'll do a few push-ups, a few squats, through a few pull-ups, just to get the blood flowing through the system, and then I'll have my cold shower, and then I'm in the attitude of right, let's crush the day.
Nice.
Let's go and do something, you know.
Is breakfast a thing straight after that, or
No, well, the thing is, I get up pretty early now, man. You know, so I actually am doing the intermittent fasting thing. I've got an app. My friend developed an app called Paleo Clock, and it tells you when the optimal times to eat in the day are. And the thing is, I like an 8-hour window when I'm eating.
Yep.
So I'll generally eat at say 8, 9, 10, and then I'll have my last meal. As in, I will finish eating 8 hours later.
Yeah, okay.
And that's it. And it really...
So it's like mid-afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what time. I mean, sometimes I eat at 11, so that means But the thing is, I like to eat at least 2 hours before I go to bed,
Okay.
and then everything's cleared. And then
Yeah.
I mean, you read about like the spikes in human growth hormone you get and things like that. But man, it feels great. I've leaned down a lot. I've put on weight. You've got to make sure you get your calories in. I know you're not a big fan of this intermittent fasting stuff, but in fairness to you, you did say to me, try it. You said, when I was talking to you about it, you said, try it. You said, everyone is different. What works for one person doesn't work for another. And I felt more energetic since I've been doing it. I felt more alert through my mind. Annoyingly, most people haven't picked up on that, but no, man, so that's my morning routine. I get up and then and I just like, right, get on with it
Nice.
straight away.
Nice. I like it. What's the best book you've read in the last 12 months?
Oh God, best book. God, I love reading as well. I read a lot of books.
Go back further than 12 months.
And I can tell you. I tell you, Tribe.
Ooh, Sebastian
Tribe.
Junger?
Yeah, that's a great book.
I
Man.
haven't read it.
I lent it to a friend of mine, actually. I was going to say, I've got to get it back often because it's one of those books that I want to lend to people.
Yep.
I want to say, and the thing is, for the Jungle Brothers movement, it's really applicable, man. So it's like,
Sick.
That's a great book.
That's a good recommendation. That's been on my list for a while.
Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
I heard him on Joe Rogan and I fucking loved that episode.
Dude, it's the book is amazing, and I love it where it talks about, and it actually really resonated with me, where it talks about purpose, living with purpose. And a lot of people, they live, they have their kids. That's a big thing they live for, is their kids. They're like, right, I've got to do everything for my kids. But that's just one facet of it. You're living for, he was talking about, like when he was with all these soldiers that were in Afghanistan, and these guys didn't have electricity for a year, and they were on top of this hill in Afghanistan, and he was living with them for a long period. Obviously they got like heli drops and things like that, but these guys were there for a year. And the thing was, he said,
that was the movie he made, Restrepo. Was it Restrepo?
I haven't seen the movie, but
Okay,
I've
yeah.
read about it in the book. But basically what he said, when everyone got back home, he said, obviously they had some celebrating to do. He said they had some pretty wild parties, he said. But the thing is, he said when they got that out of the way, a lot of them wanted to go back. They wanted to go back onto that hill. And he said a lot of it came down to purpose. They relied on each other. Like they knew that, like Bob knew he had to keep an eye on the right flank. It's not that he didn't have a choice. He was going to do it, and all his boys were relying on him to do it. And
Or else someone's going to die.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's obviously an extreme example, but
That's what they were dealing with, right?
that's what they were doing. But they were dealing with purpose,
Yeah.
real purpose, and it was like, and he said it was, and a lot of the time you don't get that in modern day life. I mean, you look at, for instance, Joe and I before we were talking about Elon Musk. That guy lives with purpose, man. you can't drive yourself like that unless he believes what he's doing.
That's right.
Like, that's you kick up a notch when you're living with purpose, and I've felt this myself. It's like, you've got, and then you go, oh no, I got to do this.
Yeah, it energizes
you.
you.
This is like, so it's like, okay, let's do. You're not like, well, we'll schedule a meeting and maybe next week we'll have. No, we're doing it now. Like, clear the desks right now, and I like that. Everyone has that feeling every now and then, and I really like that. That's so. To come back to what you were saying, Tribe really brought home to me the living with purpose principle.
Nice. Last one for you. What's like a belief around training that you've changed your mind on in recent years? So something that you might have once thought that you flipped on.
That's a really good question, man, and it actually links back to what we were talking about. You need to be altruistic. One needs to be altruistic. If I learn something, like a move or anything, I wouldn't tell anyone. I'd keep it to myself. And I didn't realize that I was actually harming myself doing it. Obviously, you don't want to, if you're competing a lot, you're not going to tell the guys you're competing with all your moves. But I should have realized and been able to take care, to realize that my training partners were my assets. And if I said, man, I'm making this mistake, you're catching me with this all the time, or I just saw this move, it's working brilliantly, I want to drill it with you, and just showed the guys what I was doing, and then practice. The point was, you've got to take care of your training partners, man. You've got to treat them better than you treat yourself. And if you do that, then you will improve. Because especially in jiu-jitsu, in boxing, you can get pretty good hitting the bag. Shadowboxing, you can get to a reasonable standard. In jiu-jitsu, you are nothing without the other guy. What are you going to do? Use a grappling dummy? Like, all right, fine. You'll probably get quite good at suplexing it and going from knee ride, but you need a training partner.
So the more you can share and build them up,
the better they get.
Your development will be.
And it's like I had to lose that selfishness of me wanting to be number one, to realizing it doesn't matter. No one cares.
Yeah.
If you do get there, it's fleeting at best.
But that is also a more effective path to being number one, right? It's not about winning the training.
Exactly. It's when you let go of that, you'll actually, ironically, stand a greater chance of getting there.
Yeah. Very nice, man. Man, I think that's a good point for us to wrap up on.
Nice.
Thanks for making the time today. Can you just tell us what classes you're coaching down here each week? You've got when are your grappling classes?
So it's Monday at 6:45.
Yep.
It's Tuesday at 9:30, I think, and it's Thursday at 6:45. So
nice. All in the morning, AMs.
Yeah, all AMs. Yeah. So if you fancy a class, guys, get down there. It's of course. Mr. Joe is in the evenings.
I got the evenings. Yeah, I got Wednesday night 7:15, Friday 6:15 p.m, and then I got Saturday morning 9 a.m. You're doing privates. If anyone wants privates, you're available for that.
If you want to take your game to the next level quickly, a private will definitely help. It's it's a no-brainer in that sense. But if you're interested, please come and have a chat.
Nice. All right, homie. Thank you, man.
Legend. Thank you, sir.
Cheers.